patients call upwards of 5 to 7 offices when looking for a dentist. They are looking for the best experience. They're reading Google reviews. And I think when the patient hangs up the phone, if they're not really wowed on the phone, they're well, let me try this one. Maybe they can get me in sooner. And then they book several appointments and they don't cancel appointments and then they don't show up.
Welcome back to episode 75 of the Dental Practice Launch podcast. I am your host, Shane Simmons. I'm the founder of Crimson Media Dental Marketing, where we help dental practices and owners build freedom in their practice through proven online marketing. And of course, I'm the host of this Dental Practice Launch podcast, where we are trying to help dentists out, bringing in experts in different areas of dentistry and just kind of give you guys an idea of what's working out there and how to make your practice the most successful and least amount of stress as possible. And that's why today is a perfect segue into our guest, Susan Leckowicz, who is the owner of Dental Coaches. I met Susan at a CE on the Beach event by Manal Sampat in I almost want to say Turks and Caicos, but it was Grand Cayman in June, and really just hit it off with Susan. She has a lot of really great insights there. And so today we're going to dive into front desk, team training, issues that may be happening that you don't even know about and how you can really overcome those. But before we dive into some of those juicy questions that I get from you guys all of the time, first, just want to give Susan an opportunity to first say, welcome, but also get an idea of how did you end up in this, crazy world of dentistry and specifically, coaching, teams and front desks.
So I grew up with a dad who was passionate about being a dentist. He thought everyone should be in dentistry. And I ended up enjoying a dental hygiene career for about 19 years. And during that time, I worked in different practices where there were different coaches that came in. And I really enjoyed having an outside observer share with me what are other offices doing, setting goals, challenging us, giving us opportunities to grow personally and professionally. And one of these coaches saw something in me and said, I think you'd be a good coach. And at the time I was really comfortable. I was living 3 miles from my office. I was working commission. I was flattered, but it wasn't good timing for me. And I said, well, thank you. Appreciate that. But years later, I ended up moving to from Connecticut to Pennsylvania. And I was looking for a practice that was a little exceptional. And I was kind of living in the woods of Pennsylvania. So I reached out to this gal that I knew. And I said, do you know any good dental offices in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh? And she's like, I don't, but I'm with a new coaching company and we're hiring and I'd love to have you meet my team. So I worked for Productive Dentist Academy for 9 years as a coach. And I really grew and enjoyed working with dental practices around the country, developing processes and systems to help them grow. And 8 years ago, I launched my own business called Dental Coaches. My dad was kind of chirping in my ear, when are you going to go on your own? And was meeting other individuals who had their own coaching companies. And there were things that I wanted to do that were a little bit different. And I was just ready to take a leap. And I did. And it was great. So we work with clients all over the country, fee-for-service practices, PPO practices, group practices. And I named my company Dental Coaches. And I got very lucky that URL was available. I don't know how that was available, but my belief is that one person can't know everything about running a dental practice. So I do everything I can to network and go to events and go to meetings and look for specialists and expertise in certain areas so that I can provide my clients with, fitting their needs. So as a result, what's really nice is I've had clients for a long, long time. Some clients came with me from the other coaching company, and I just try to future pace them and, create value. So. And I love patient phone training. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great segue into today because from, the marketing side of it, what we see, of course, we kind of do a little bit of a listening into calls, a little secret shopping, things like that. And man, you see some practices that are just like, you could tell like their team is confident. They know how to answer, questions, tough questions, and they convert really well. And then you have on the other end of the spectrum, practices that are just really, really struggling and converting new patients on the phones, just like getting them into the practice. And I'm sure in your experience, you saw this and was an issue, and this is why, dental coaches came to be. But, let's go through this and kind of talk a little bit about one of the biggest challenges practices are facing is just, it has to be outsourced, right? The doctor can't do it unless it's, they're in a tight situation. Maybe we have some startups have had to answer their phones, when a staff member hasn't worked out or something. But can you just, before we dive into specifics, how critical is it to be able to nail that first patient impression on the phone in order to be able to just get a chance to get them in the door?
Well, we know from studies that patients call upwards of 5 to 7 offices when looking for a dentist. They are looking for the best experience. They're reading Google reviews. And even though team members sometimes feel like, oh, well, I scheduled that patient, I think when the patient hangs up the phone, if they're not really wowed on the phone, they're going to, well, let me try this one. Maybe they can get me in sooner. Or maybe they're convincing me that this is a really great place to be. And then they book several appointments and they don't cancel appointments, and then they don't show up for you. And I don't know if you've ever felt that where gee, new patient booked, didn't come in. Well, what we really like to look at is how can we raise the conversion rate for our clients. So we look at starting conversion rates. So starting conversion rates for most practices can be anywhere from 30 to 40%. 30 to 40% of the calls get converted to an appointment, to a scheduled appointment. So what we set a goal of is we want to set that conversion rate to 70%. And what we found is that the team doesn't really have a process or a system or know how to control or guide the call so that they can, connect with the patient on the phone. They can show that they care about this person. They can convince them that they've called the best office, they've called the right place, they're going to get taken care of, and they can collaborate with the appointment so that they're excited to come in. And when we listen to calls, with teams together during our boot camp, you could hear the team member go, wow, I sounded kind of mean on that call. They're recognizing the difference, of oh yeah, I wasn't too nice to that patient, or I could have done a better job, where they're just so busy sometimes, right? They're the octopus at the front desk and they've got a lot going on. So we create a call slip and a process and a system to create the great impression, guide the call, get the patient scheduled, and get off the phone. Don't go down the bunny trails of all these different clinical questions that really you can't answer on the phone.
100%. Yeah. And that's a fascinating stat, that I think most practices may be naive to this, that 30 to 40% of calls actually get converted. Every practice owner I talk to, if we're, potentially looking to maybe work together, I ask them hey, what's that process like? And, oh, we convert really high on the phones. And then you go in and you're like, whoa, no, so I guess, do you see that as a blind spot? Are practice owners, not monitoring that? Or is it just a matter of, as a business owner, do you really have the time in addition to what you're doing to monitor that? And, that's probably where, somebody like you comes in to be able to, do that, I'm assuming.
Right. Well, yes, it's time consuming, and yes, it's important. So what we'll do for clients is either we'll monitor it for them or we'll train a team lead to do it. Usually the doctor doesn't have the time to do it, but someone on that team, and you don't necessarily have to have an office manager, but you need to have someone that weekly is monitoring and logging in. And even with our training, that has to continue, right? It has to be something that is watched and is, listened to. And oftentimes too, when a team member goes, oh, I forgot to tell them about our membership plan, or we have flexible payment plans, you can call the patient back. You've got the phone number, and you can call them back. And if you've connected with them, got their name, used it in the sentence, they know what your name is, people can appreciate that. So yes, it's important to monitor it. Most doctors are not personally doing it, but we work with getting team members trained on how to do it, so it's not too overwhelming.
And, to that point, when we talk about, as a business owner, as practice owners, again, they're busy. And so I think that's so important. But you shared something with me right before we started this recording that I would love for you to share with the audience. And that is really the opportunity cost of if you're not doing this, like, this needs to be a priority, because I don't think you're realizing, and people realize how much money is left out there on the table, how much treatment, how many potential referrals. But you shared something with me around like an annual patient value and that percentage. Can you share that with the audience? Because that kind of blew me away.
Right. So we like to look at the annual patient value. So you take the total collections and you divide it by the number of active patients during that period of time, that year. Active patient meaning they had an appointment in your practice in the past 18 months. So this is a way to kind of look at operationally and financially patient satisfaction. How well are you doing? So with these stats, we can see an annual patient value anywhere from $800 to $1,500 per year. That's what patients are spending, in your practice. Depending on your service mix, it could be a lot higher too. So if you think about that's what, an annual patient value is worth. And if you think, okay, if we say we get a total of 60 new patients calling the office a month, and the conversion rate is 40, that means 24 of those calls will get scheduled, 36 will get lost. And sometimes out of that 24, there could be, a 10% broken or cancellation rate. So say 21 show up or 20 show up. But if you think about a marketing cost, what is the cost of patient acquisition? And this could be your marketing spend could be anywhere between $200 and $500, total marketing expenses divided by total number of new patients. So the national average patient acquisition cost is $375. So, each call lost is costing the practice $375. And that's something to share with your team so they know the importance of converting these patients, right? The job is to convert them and get them, this is what we're spending to get that phone to ring. So 36 patients times $374, $375, per patient is over $13,000 a month. Okay. So if your cost of patient acquisition is $200, you're losing $7,200 a month. If it's $500, you're losing $18,000 a month. And it's staggering, right?
So it could be a lot of practices could be losing well over 6 figures annually on that.
Yeah.
Man.
Right. Yeah. And the patients are calling because they need a dentist, right? They have a need. They're trying to fulfill a need. They're either in pain or they're looking for something, or everybody needs a good dentist. So, they're looking, and if it's not going to be you, it's going to be somebody else.
Yeah. And that is a great, having that foundation here for some of the questions that we're going to ask that I know practice owners struggle with and their team struggle with, but knowing that first off, and having to get your team to understand that and buy into that, because if they just see, patient didn't book, schedule, it's like, oh, they don't think about it, but that patient could have turned into 2-3 referrals. I think the average patient, ends up referring, 2 patients over 18, 24 month periods on the conservative side. So just thinking in those areas there. But you had mentioned earlier how you work with a combination of PPO practices, fee-for-service practices. Yep. So this question, Susan, is the bane of my existence as a marketer, and I think the bane of the existence of so many dental practice owners. And that is, that the simple question of, hello, thank you for calling so-and-so dental. How can we help you today? Yeah, I've got Delta. I was wondering if you take my insurance. Okay. So 2 scenarios here. 1, you're in network with them and there's a way to handle that. You're out of network or fee for service. Is that patient just automatically, if you're a fee for service practice, they're not going to come because they have Delta? Because I feel like a lot of practices treat it that way. No, we don't. I'm sorry. We're out of network. And okay, thanks. See ya. Bye.
Right.
What should be happening there? And is it possible to get those patients in the door?
Yes. So my thought process and belief is patients don't know what else to ask. They think dentistry is a commodity. A crown is a crown is a crown. An implant's an implant. They're asking about their insurance because they don't know what else to ask, or they just got this insurance, or they're asking for the cost because they don't know what else to ask. Who has the cheapest dental care? So we train the team onto, okay, we're going to just sort of pause and take a deep breath and go, Shane, that's a great question. I'd be happy to explain how Delta works in our office. May I ask you a few questions first? How did you hear about us, Shane? What made you call us today? Shane, Dr. Simmons is going to take great care of you. I'm so sorry you're in pain. I know we can help you. And here is how we work with Delta. We're considered an unrestricted provider on that plan. We're not under the contracted network fees, but we have a lot of patients with Delta who come here. We have flexible payment plans. Have you used this Delta plan before? Some patients have never used their insurance before. They don't know how it works. They think they have to go to someone in the network. So you have to kind of lean into how familiar the patient is with their, insurance, and be able to say, we can see you. We've, helped a lot of people like you. We can get you in as early as this afternoon to get you out of pain. So you have to guide the call, and you have to we say, like, put a little sticky note in that question. And how much does a crown cost? How much does a cleaning cost? Great question. I'd be happy to explain that. Can I ask you a couple questions first? So we're teaching them how to connect. Use the patient's name 3 times in the sentence. Say some positive statements about the office. Really let them know they called the right place. Have you seen our Google reviews? I know we can help you. We've helped a lot of patients like you. And that, that's kind of the process. And then if you say, well, you know what, I really want to go to a in-network Delta provider. Okay, Shane, I understand. Let me tell you that if you can't find someone who can get you out of pain today that's in your network, call us back. We're happy to help you. We want to get you out of pain. And a lot of times we can do that even with the Medicaid calls. Some offices, they can't find a Medicaid provider who can get them in right away. And you know what? We can't work with Medicaid, but we can help you get out of pain. Is that the only way you can pay for your care? So you have to have financing options through third-party financing companies, I believe, to be able to lower that barrier to care. But at least we can try, as opposed to saying, no, we're not a network. Bye.
See ya. And that what you just brought up there, everybody listening to this, like, go back and listen to that again. I mean, that's a game changer for your practice, because how different can you make your office be as far as setting yourself apart when you do what Susan just said, and you turn it into, well, let me find out some questions about you. You start to build that rapport, build that relationship, because you're going to get more patients scheduled from that, because they don't know. Like Susan said, they don't know. So if they feel like somebody's actually caring, that customer service they're getting is amazing, there's a much higher chance of converting them. But like you said, even if that patient's like, I do want to go somewhere that's in network, don't you think they're going to remember, though, like the next several offices they call, the type of service that your team gave them on the phone? And there's probably a good likelihood some of these patients are going to end up calling back, because these places were booked out. They didn't seem to care nearly as much as you guys did. I want to go ahead and schedule that appointment. And I think we just have to have an open mind about it too, because I think sometimes dentists and their teams get in these silos where it's like, yeah, but we're on a network with the insurance. Like they're going to complain, or, they don't even try sometimes. And I think that's a real opportunity you just brought up that can, show, hey, you can still get some of those patients.
And some of those out-of-network benefits aren't bad, especially with preventative care. Sometimes it's like a $20 copay, or, is it worth it? Is a better experience worth it? I don't know. Like you said, you have to keep an open mind, and you just have to think about, how can I help this patient? And, what do they need? And, and just be open.
You can't be just another dental practice. Like
right.
The questions, the relationship building, it's like, that's going to make an impact. Whether you convert those patients or don't, they're going to remember it. It's going to leave an impact on them. And you're going to naturally, people are going to be like, I want to pay for that level of service. Like a perfect example of that in my own life is like our pediatrician for my 2 kids. It's like my wife changed jobs and our insurance is through her. And now that doctor's out of network. We've still been going to her for the last year because it's like, we love the personalization. Like they remember us every time we go in there, right? It's like they're so good with the kids. Like the kids love them. It's like, we're going to pay a little more out of pocket gladly because our kids are comfortable. We're comfortable. And I don't want to have to worry about trying to find, somebody to build that again. And so it's very easy, I think, to be able to differentiate yourself. It just takes a little bit of effort. I think that's exactly what you're saying there. It sounded like.
And a lot of people will wait to get insurance before they call the dentist or they start a new job or they, I never had dental insurance before, but they don't know anything about it. And, that's where you have to kind of explain. And I had a gal working for me in my team who was, came from a teaching background, and she was a great coach because she could teach. And she's like, I feel like we have to explain dental insurance to like the world, one person at a time. Like how does it really work? It's limited. You only get so much a year. It's so different from health insurance. Like people just don't understand their policies and their plans. And, if they need a lot of work, sometimes it's not the benefit they think it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point there. Now, you brought up the other side of that, coin there, which was like somebody calling. Some people think of dentistry as a commodity. And I think it's important kind of right there where we don't give up on those people. They just need to be educated. Some people will then realize, oh, wow, like this practice is, different. They have great reviews, all of these things. And then some may not care, and that's fine. Like you're not going to get everybody. But for those patients who do call, it's like, hey, how much is an implant? I need to get an implant. How much is an implant? What's the best way that the team should be handling that type of question in order to be able to get that patient in, get them in for a consultation and so on?
So that happens a lot. And again, we will coach them to like put a little sticky note in that and just at least connect. Oh, I'm curious why you're asking about implants. Well, I'm losing all my teeth, or I lost a tooth years ago, or my mother needs an implant. Like get a little more information about implants, because guess what? Patients are going on the internet, going to ChatGPT. They're looking up the cost. They're looking up information. So find out what they need. Create that value statement. I don't know if you know this, Shane, but Dr. Simmons places the implants here. You can get everything done here. Places the implants, restores the implants. We have our own lab. Whatever you feel comfortable, or Dr. Simmons is has advanced training in dental implant placement. Loves doing dental implants. Okay, so let's talk about the cost. So it's difficult to quote an exact fee over the phone without knowing your particular needs. But what I can tell you is that dental implants start around $3,000 per tooth and can go up from there. And we have flexible payment plans. We can work with any budget. So we review with the doctor. We have what we call our pricing sheet. Okay, somebody asks for the cost of an extraction. Somebody asks for the cost of an implant, cost of a cleaning. We want to give them a starting point. We don't want to say, oh, I'm sorry, can't tell you. We don't quote fees over the phone. Okay. We don't want to say, well, it's anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000, because they're going to hear 10,000. Yeah. They're going to remember. So, it's like, and you know what, Shane, I can tell you that Dr. Simmons will go over a complete treatment plan with you, so there's no surprises, and we can estimate, what your benefit plan will pay, what you need to pay. I don't even like to say dental insurance. I like to say, oh, you have a dental benefit plan. It's a benefit plan. You have so much benefit per year. You get about, this much per year. You have a benefit plan. It's really not insurance. It's not like your medical insurance. So it gives them an idea, right? Okay, that sounds reasonable. That's, so that's how we do it.
That's, yeah. And I think, there's so many ways I could go with this, but again, like you said, I think it's just something where the person asking, they really don't know what else to ask. And the reason I say that is because, we know it drives, dentists crazy, because it's like, oh, it depends. But you probably dealt this too, but then dentists will reach out about your services, and first thing they ask is, so how much does it cost? And you're like, well, it depends, right? Because we got to assess it. And I always tell people it's like a consultation. Like we got to assess and see what's going on and develop a budget and all of these things. So I think it's just coming from a place of maybe not knowing how to start the conversation. So that doesn't mean rule them out because they're just price shopping and cancel the call. So that's big. And again, just keeping all of this in mind about the average patient value that we talked about earlier, being $375
no, that's
annually.
The acquisition cost.
Or I'm sorry, $370 for the patient acquisition cost, but the average patient volume was like $1,300.
Yeah, right.
Per year. Yeah. And to acquire the patient, where I was going with this, thank you for that, was $375. So think about the difference there. If your team's converting, on the lower end, you could be closer to that $500 range to acquire a patient. And I see it versus we see some of the other offices that we work with that are, by the way, fee-for-service practices. $150 is their acquisition, and it's all based on how they handle these questions and the way that they position it, and that is a huge difference in the long term.
Right. And the next step with this is, we develop a customized new patient call slip. So team members, what they have a habit of doing, new patient calls, and they pull up the appointment book and they say, oh, I have a toothache. Oh, okay. What's your email? Yeah, this is what I hear. They're not even like, I'm sorry, you're in pain. What's your email? And they're intake. And so we create a sheet. We highly suggest, and really during our boot camp we ask them to bring the sheets. They use the sheet and then they take that sheet and they give it to the doctor. Okay, we had 10 new patients call today. They got 5 got scheduled or 10 got scheduled, whatever it is. These are the ones that didn't get scheduled, these are the ones that did. And then we coach, especially fee for service, especially big cases, that dentist will call that patient the day they schedule the appointment to welcome them to the practice. And we help them script it out so it feels comfortable and natural, but it's like, hi Shane, this is Dr. Leckowicz. I understand you're going to come see me tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We're going to take great care of you. I'm looking forward to meeting you. And whether it's just a message or a brief conversation, it creates a huge value of, oh my God, the doctor called me to welcome me to the office. And some of the doctors are like, oh, it's a pain. And most of them, though, are like, you know what? It's nice because they hear my voice. I hear their voice. Sometimes we have a brief conversation. They come in. They're already like wowed by that process. And it doesn't take a lot of time.
Yeah. And that's, it reminds me of, I don't know if you knew the late Dr. Bob Pick, Robert Pick, but he is a good friend of mine. And, for those of you, who don't know him, he was I believe a periodontist up in like the Chicago area. And one of the things he did, now granted, I know specialists, so, had a little bit more time to do this and may not be able to do this, with every patient, but he used to, after any procedure he would do, implant, whatever, he and like his, assistant who was there on the case with him would literally record like just a 10-second video on his phone, every patient that had a procedure. Hey, this is, Dr. Pick, just wanted to check in on you, see how you're feeling. How are you doing? If you have any questions, concerns, please let us know. We're here to help you. We really appreciate you. And we're here. And he would then have his team send those texts out every single day to any patient that he worked on. And the reception that would get from people, because it wasn't just a call, which a call I think is a good start in and of itself, because a lot of people don't even do that. But just, can you imagine getting a video, like just a quick little video from your
and you could do a welcome video too,
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a little touch point that sets you apart. And so I think, again, this is a good way for you to, everybody to think about it, which is, you mentioned the boot camp, and I want to like kind of talk about that. And now as we've addressed challenges, everybody knows there's challenges that front desk have, and it's not all just on them, right? It's just lack of training and whatnot. But you have a boot camp, you mentioned there. Can you talk a little bit about like really how that's formatted and the big takeaways that people who go through your program get, and maybe share an example of one of those, practices I know you've worked with who've had a 30%, conversion rate on the phones, and that's gone up to 60, 70%.
Mhm. Well, I developed the boot camp for a couple different reasons. I had done new patient phone training in the past with some of our coaching clients, and I would go in and listen to calls, and I'm like, what happened? What happened to the value statement? What happened to the greeting? What happened? They're not following it. Oh yeah, oh yeah, I know we should, or oh, we have some new people. So I said, okay, in order to really change behavior and create new neural pathways in the brain, we need like 2 to 3 months of training. So I said, we're going to do weekly training on Zoom, 45 minutes. We're going to record it. We're going to have a PowerPoint. We're going to have a workbook. You're going to get the recordings. You get some new team member in. You can put them through the boot camp. Okay. So we start with, and we promise the team 45 minutes. It's going to be 45 minutes. We need your full attention. We discuss a concept. We listen to calls, and then we simulate. And everybody gets a chance to simulate. We demonstrate it, and then we simulate it, and we practice it. And we talk about the call conversion. And what I found is that the administrative team is excited because many times there's not a metric for them to measure their success. It's easier for the hygienist and the dentist to say, oh, we did so many crowns or we did so much production. But this is something that they get really proud of, and they feel like they have a process and a plan and they know what to do. So over time, what we do is we create incentives for them. Okay, so we have a scorecard. If you score a 4 out of 5 out of 5 random calls, you get an extra whatever that doctor wants to do. Whether it's $50, $100, but we create healthy competition, amongst the team, and we encourage them to listen to calls together. So we work with them to create like this. And what we found is that team members will say, well, in the beginning, the simulating felt awkward, because simulating role playing always does, because then it got easy. And they're like, what a difference from start to finish, like a before call versus an after call. Like, wow, we made so much progress, and they're proud of that. And, it's very successful, and the doctors are very happy. And we encourage the doctors to come to some of the trainings. They don't have to come to all of them, but I think it's important that they, kind of set the tone and come to some of them. And it's a lot of fun. And it works. It works. I don't know what else to say about it, but I think the beauty of it is being able to have it recorded, so that if somebody new comes on the team, or if somebody's like, hey, why don't you refresh how to put the sticky note in that, question about cost, go watch session 2 again, or pull out your workbook and just kind of review that, and gives them a tool, right? A training tool.
Yeah, and I think too that the importance of that is, if you do this training, you invest in your team, you have these recordings and all of this, it's like, God forbid, but your front desk maybe retires or moves away, or whatever the case is. Well, then you've got the foundation there, right, moving forward, for this new person to come in as like an onboarding, to be
Right.
like, here's how we do that. And then, as we all know, it's much easier typically when you're hiring someone to bring them in and be able to have kind of the set way to do things than have somebody in a role for 20 years and then try to change
Right.
them later on, where you might deal with a little bit more friction.
Right. Well, and what we try to do too, with the owner doctors, is say, okay, let's get the team aligned with what your goals are, where this practice is going. What's our new patient goal per month? What's our conversion rate per month? And then how do we get really clear on expectations and what they're supposed to do? And then how do we engage them and hold them accountable? So we were training a large team, and one of the gals wrote on her paper. And she did great in simulating, like she did great. But she wrote on her paper to her buddy next to, like, I'm not doing this. Okay, now the office manager saw this and says, hey, Heather, I saw you write down, like, I'm not doing this. And she goes, oh, I was just kidding. And sure enough, we log in the next day. We're like, okay, everybody, we're going to be logging in, listening to calls tomorrow. Everybody got the greeting down. We're going to, So sure enough, Heather wasn't doing it. And Heather, kind of self-selected out and decided to move away from this practice. It was the best thing that ever could happen, because she wasn't gonna do it, but we helped them create the plan and executed it, and then have the accountability part of it. So
Wow.
sometimes
Yeah.
you need to do that, you know.
Yeah, no, you do. And, last question here I have, and then I definitely want to, let people know how they can reach out to you, and we'll have some resources and things in the comments as well. But for anybody listening to this today, if there's just one piece of advice, one actionable tactic that they could start with their team this week to start improving their conversion on the phone, or maybe even just becoming aware of it, right? What's that like one thing you would recommend that, start this today or, next week to make sure that you're starting on the right path?
I would say really encourage your team to connect with that person on the phone. Get their name and use it. Find out why they were calling, and really be as supportive and as uplifting and positive that you can help them. We can help you. You've called the right place. Dr. Simmons is amazing. Our hygienists are awesome. Whatever they say they need, we have to, what do they need? What do we have? How do we fulfill that need in a different way? And, your team's got to believe it, right? They've got to be confident and believe it. But if they can set that office apart with what you do, it's gonna make a big difference with, even if they have to say, okay, well, we're not in network with Delta, but tell me more about what's going on with you. If they don't get that part right, tell me how we can help you. Why did you call us today? They never seem sometimes to ask why they called. So get, kind of dig a little bit with what that patient needs. I literally heard a patient tell a team member, oh, I'm really afraid of going to the dentist. I don't like going to the dentist, and I've had bad experiences. And she was like, you know what? Dr. Simmons is going to take great care of you. We're going to take great care of you. And I literally heard this man whisper it back out loud going, they're going to take good care of me.
Wow.
And he was
Wow.
like, yeah. And I'm like, that's powerful. People want confidence that you're the practice for them.
Yeah. And then, like you said, too, earlier, it builds on your team's confidence. And then the more confidence that they start to build, the better, they start to do it, that they see that it works. It makes them feel good. It's just, it's like a ripple effect there. And I think that's excellent advice. Well, Susan, this has been great. So I'm sure there's people listening to this that are like, hey, we know we have some holes, in our front desks that, we can improve on, definitely, get better at. What is the best way that people who are interested in learning more about what you do and potentially working with you can get in contact with you?
Well, people can go on my website, dentalcoaches.com, and schedule a call with me and my Calendly link. They can reach out to me, my email, Susan at dentalcoaches.com. And another tip I would say is listen to your calls. Listen to the calls and really kind of see what's happening with those calls. Just listen to some of them, and you don't have to listen to hours on end, because the same mistakes or challenges are going to happen, continually on the calls. And I'm happy to provide our scorecard, how we score calls. And, in this 5-point scorecard are our tips, how to, smile, have a great tone, care, connect, convince, collaborate, and some examples. And then you score some of your calls, how's the team doing? And maybe just even showing them a scorecard might get them thinking about it. And we make it fun. I know a lot of teams have had bad experiences with some new patient phone training, but we make it fun.
Yeah. And it's a good point, because I think people oftentimes it's scary, right, to listen to the calls, right? Because you're kind of afraid of what you might hear, what you might find. And it's a little bit of a scary process, but it's a looking at it through the lens of this is going to make us better. And I think that's too where, having a third party, somebody coming in and having, their kind of finger on that pulse makes it more comforting, right? Because we as business owners, practice owners, take it kind of personal, right? If we see things and we're like, dang, like then it gets scary and nobody wants to review it, but you're not going to get better. The practice isn't going to get better if you don't have those hard, conversations
Right.
sometimes, I guess. So,
Right.
well, Susan, thank you so much. And we will have all the information down below in the show notes for anybody listening, watching this, with links and all that good stuff, to get in contact with Susan and Dental Coaches. And just thank you again for being a guest on episode 75 of Dental Practice Lodge podcast.
Yes.
Take care, Susan.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, Shane.